Today, we're diving into a pretty troubling crisis in American education. Based on a major investigative report, we're going to look at how the simple act of learning to read has been, for decades, kept out of reach for so many students.
And really, this whole explainer comes down to one big question. You see, the source material argues that this wasn't some accident, but actually the direct result of very specific choices made over many, many years.
17%. Think about that for a second. According to national data, that's the number of Black fourth graders who can actually read proficiently. The average for all students? It's almost double that. This isn't just a small gap, it's a massive chasm, and it really sets the stage for everything else we're about to talk about.
And this isn't a new problem. I mean, just look at this timeline. Back in 1992, only 8% were proficient. Fast forward more than 20 years, and it barely crawled up to 18%. And now, it's actually slid backwards. All that time, all those resources, and basically no progress to show for it. So what's going on here?
Well, the report argues that the real answer is hiding inside our schools. It's this fierce, ideological fight that's been going on for over half a century, a battle over the very idea of how you teach a kid to read.
So this battle really boils down to two completely different camps. In one corner, you have systematic phonics. This is the science-backed method where you explicitly teach kids how to decode words by linking sounds to letters. In the other corner, you've got balanced literacy. It was super popular, and it told kids to guess words using clues, like the pictures on the page or the context of the sentence. One is about decoding, the other is about cueing. And that difference, well, it turns out it's everything.
And this, right here, is the core of the problem. The report found that even though there was a mountain of scientific evidence saying phonics works, it was the unproven methods that somehow became the norm in schools all across the country, especially in the districts serving a majority of Black children.
Okay, so you're probably wondering, how on earth did the less effective method become the one everyone used? The source points to three major players that together built and maintained this system.
It wasn't just one thing. The report describes this system where a few powerful players' interests all just clicked into place. First, you've got publishers who made a ton of money selling these trendy balanced literacy materials. Then, you have the universities that trained waves of new teachers using those very same methods, often without ever teaching them the science of reading. And finally, teachers' unions stepped in to defend their members' freedom in the classroom, which often meant fighting back against phonics programs they saw as too rigid and scripted.
Now, to be clear, the report isn't saying this was some kind of secret conspiracy. It was more of a systemic breakdown. You had these separate interests, profit, ideology, and just plain old inertia, that all came together to create a system that was almost impossible to change, all while reading scores for Black students went nowhere.
And you can really feel the pushback on the ground with this quote from a teacher in Oakland. This tells you it wasn't just about teaching methods. For a lot of educators, this felt personal. Phonics was seen as this dehumanizing approach, the system telling them how to do their job. This emotional side of it is a huge piece of the puzzle for understanding why the resistance was so fierce.
So let's shift gears from the why to the so what, because this isn't just about policies and debates. There's a real devastating human cost here. When a kid doesn't learn to read, the fallout goes way, way beyond the classroom walls.
And that connection is just stark. A child who isn't reading at grade level by the end of third grade is 4 times more likely to drop out of high school. That third grade mark, it's like a fork in the road for a kid's entire future.
And dropping out, well, it hits you right in the wallet. The data shows that less than half of recent dropouts are employed. Compare that to their peers who have a diploma. This is really just the beginning of a tough economic road.
But the consequences can get even more serious. A staggering 78% of adults in U.S. prisons read below a basic level. The connection is so strong, some have said for years, that you can predict the need for future prison beds based on third-grade reading scores. I mean, when you hear the term school-to-prison pipeline, this is what they're talking about, right here in the numbers.
So you see how it all links together? It's this tragic cycle. The report shows how you start with denying a kid the right way to learn to read. That leads to low reading scores, which leads to higher dropout rates, which leads to less work, less money, and a higher chance of ending up in prison. It shows how one failure, right at the beginning, can just snowball over a person's entire life. Okay, So that's a lot of tough news. But the story isn't over. After all these years of failure, a new movement is popping up, and it's changing the conversation entirely. It's reframing this whole thing not as just another school debate, but as a fight for basic justice.
And you have civil rights groups like the NAACP stepping up, demanding real accountability. The head of the St. Louis NAACP put it bluntly, saying state officials are like bad employees not doing their job, and black children are the ones who suffer. This is a huge shift from just asking for better programs to demanding that people do the job they're supposed to do.
And here's the proof that this can be fixed. It's not just a theory. I mean, look at Mississippi. Historically, they were at the bottom of every education list. But after they passed tough statewide reforms based on phonics, they're now leading the entire country in reading gains for black fourth graders. Now compare that to the places that stuck with the old methods, where the numbers are still heartbreakingly low.
And that brings us to what might be the single most important point in this whole explainer. This crisis was not inevitable. It was created by policy choices. And if it was created by policy, that means it can be fixed by policy. This is a solvable problem.
And this is where that new way of thinking comes in. The argument now is that real social justice isn't just about abstract ideas. It's about giving every single child the actual tools they need to have a shot in life. And you can't get more fundamental than the ability to actually read the words on a page.
So at the end of the day, it all boils down to this one last really big question. When you think about everything that comes from not being able to read, the poverty, the lack of opportunity, the higher chance of incarceration, is the fight to make sure every kid is taught how to read using science, is this the defining civil rights battle of our time? That's what the report asks us to think about.